Hello everyone. Sorry about the delay. Gremlins got in there again. Don't you just love them? Anyway, good evening. How is everybody? I hope you're all well. And thank you very much for joining me tonight on this cold and windy and horrible evening. Hi Sharon. Excuse me. Hi Kathleen. It's lovely to have your company, and I'm really looking forward to spending a little bit of time with you tonight. We're going to take another look at this gorgeous Shabby Chic collection from Jamie Rodgers Crafts. Hi Tracy. Hello Joyce. Hi Andrew. Thank you all so much for joining me. I'm not at my best tonight, I will confess, so we'll just have to see how long my voice holds out. I've got a stinking cold and a bit under the weather, shall we say. But let's see how we go. Yeah, so I'm going to have a look through the collection. I'm going to refresh you all. And thank you, Sharon. Hi, Kim. Of all the different elements and the prices, things like that. Hello Sharon. Oh, I say. Hardly. Sharon was at my demo day on Saturday and we had a lovely time, didn't we? It really was a lovely, lovely day, and we were showing this collection, and I have to say that the people at the demo day absolutely loved it. And why not? What's not to love? It's gorgeous. So, hello Sheila. Hi Rosie. Oh, good. You caught up. I hope it helped, and I hope you've been making lots of gorgeous fish. Thank you, Sharon. I'm okay. I've just got a really bad cold and just a runny nose and what have you. It's that time of year, isn't it? Hello, Sue. So yeah, very exciting. The demo day on Saturday in Sheffield was a huge success. It was really, really lovely, and the ladies have asked me to return, so that's good, isn't it? The demo days are booking up very quickly. I believe now we're booking into 2027. How mad is that? I mean, it's good. But yeah, yeah, I'm a bit overwhelmed. It's lovely. So, yeah, bring it on. All right, shall we start? I'm not going to talk too much tonight because I said I don't think my voice is going to hold out too well. I'm going to demonstrate more because you've all been through this collection a couple of times now, and so I think it might just be nice to see some different ideas made with it. So that's the plan, and then I will come back and give you some dates and important bits of news and what have you later on, if that's all right with you. So sit back, relax, grab a cuppa, maybe grab a pen and pencil, and yeah, let's just get stuck in. So I'm going to run through the collection first, and then we'll get on and do some demos. Okie dokie. So the Shabby Chic collection. I was thinking about this earlier, and it's actually quite a long time since I've done any sort of vintage style projects. So it was really lovely to have this collection and to sort of revisit that style. Not that it has to be vintage either. Hi Diane. Talking of whom, Diane's done some fabulous brightly coloured samples as she does with these, and yeah, it's really lovely to see all those different styles, isn't it? So let's get in and have a look. One of the things that's come with this collection are a new set of nesting dies. Now you'll have to excuse my packaging. I quite often get my dies like this because I get samples rather than in the proper packaging, but that's all right. You can see what they are. So we've got 5 sets of nesting hearts. Beautiful, these, absolutely beautiful. I love the shape of them. I love the roundness. of them. They're just a really lovely shape. Quite big. So the biggest one here, I think, measures 8 inches, if I remember rightly, across the widest point and from top to bottom. So you're looking at an 8x8 card if you want to use the biggest one. But obviously you don't have to. But the beauty of having the big size like that is it can be used on a scrapbook page or for home decor. You could easily make beautiful hanging ornaments, heart-shaped bunting, all sorts of gorgeousness with these larger sizes. So we start with the, and there's some exciting bonuses in this set as well. So there are 5 sets. Each set will retail for £29.99. And we start with our scallop and pierce, which I think we're all familiar with now. Scallop and pierce, so we have the scallop outer edge for cutting, and then we've got our inner pierced edge, which is completely separate. Genius idea. We all appreciate how clever this is. This will give you a pierced detail. You can use these on their own to leave a heart-shaped sort of border in the card, or you can use them with the cutting edge to create a heart-shaped panel with a pierced edge to it. And we've done the scallop and pierce. The royal we have done the scallop and pierce in all the nesting sets now, so that's another one to add to that collection. Then we come to our plain ones. Obviously you can't live without your plain ones. 15 dies in this plain set. Remember, they're all £29.99, so fabulous value. And the plain set can combine with any of the fancy edges that come with the other sets, so you've more options there already. So that's your plain hearts. Then we come on to this one. Now this is extra special because we've got the postage with a dash. So the fancy edge here has got a little dash detail to it, and it's really nice to have that because quite often with the postage edges in these dies, sorry I'm picking bits off, there isn't room with this one particularly, and the fluted one, you can't always fit an edge. So we're getting a bonus in this set, if you like, with our postage and dash. Then we're getting our decal and stitch. So the stitch is a lot smaller than the dash. I don't know if you can pick this up on the camera. Possibly just about. So the decal and stitch, that's a really small dash line. This is a much bigger dash line. And then, as if that wasn't enough, we've given you fluted with a large stitch. So the large stitch is in between the stitch and the dash. So lots and lots of really gorgeous options there with these hearts. And because we've got a lovely symmetrical shape to the heart, these lend themselves to 3D ornaments. So you could fold them down the middle and maybe put 5 or 6 together back to back and create a beautiful hanging heart. That would be gorgeous, like a paper lantern for a wedding or other celebration, wouldn't it? That'd be gorgeous. That's just one quick idea. But anyway, those are the nesting hearts. Then we come on to the celebration keys. Now, I haven't got all of mine cut out, so please excuse me. This is a fabulous set. You're getting 3 keys, 3 locks, and you're getting these numbers, which are a 2, a 1 and an 8. So obviously you've got the numbers to do a 21 and an 18 for the key of the door. Sorry. These are beautiful as well. They've got lots of embossed detail on them. You can see all the dimension in those designs that comes when you cut them. And then obviously you could do all sorts of rusty techniques and all sorts of other colours with locks. You can make them look like sort of rusty copper or dark steel, or all sorts of things. You can really go to town with those. So those are your celebration keys, and those are £13.99. Then we've got the rose heart. This is a beautiful die set. 3 dies. So you've got this outer edge. Now if you cut this on its own, it'll have a solid middle. There's no cutting edge here. So it'll have a solid middle, and then you can stack other bits on top like these. So we have here a plain edge, so you can use that with that, and that will give you a frame. It will cut the middle out. You could cut this on its own to create a heart. You can cut this on its own, and this will leave the pattern in the card, it won't cut it out. If you use it with this, you'll get a freestanding heart with the pattern in the middle. So what I've done to create this one, just to give you one quick example, is I've used this edge, I haven't used the cutting edge, and then I've used the decorative panel in the middle. So that's given me this shape. If I'd used the plain heart edge in the middle of that, it would have separated the two. Without that, it leaves them together. Isn't that pretty? Really gorgeous. So that's your rose heart. Set of 3 dies there for $16.99. That was one that was very popular on Saturday, and I know that the whole collection did exceptionally well on Hobby Maker last week for Jamie as well, and I believe it's sold out at HQ, so we're waiting on restocks for this collection. So your retailers have got them, your stockists have ordered them in their droves. I think it was one of the longest stockist lists we'd ever had. So check out your local stockist if you're interested in these and see whether they've got them any left or not. And good luck. Alright, so next we have got our Happy Birthday circle. Now this is lovely because it complements the previous circle collections, which came very early on in the Essentials collection. We had 2 that were every day. I think we had Happy Birthday and Best Wishes, and then we had 2 Christmas ones as well. So they all have a different edge, and the outer edge is going to cut us a circle of some description. This one has a lovely zigzag. Now to me that could make a lovely sunny, you know, if you're doing a bright sunny card, you could use that as a sun. It's got a really lovely edge to it. So that, if you cut that on its own, that's what you will get. Then you also have 2 more dies. So you have a plain circle, which is going to cut a plain circle mat, which you can stack on top of that should you wish to. And then you have your decorative part, which says Happy Birthday to You, and it's in a lovely font. We've got block capitals for those 2 bits and a script for the birthday bit, and I really like that style of mixed fonts. So if you cut this on its own, it's going to stay in the middle of the card. So you could put it in the middle of a square, you could put it in the middle of a heart, whatever you want. If you cut these 2 together, you'll get a freestanding circle with the pattern in the middle, like this one. Happy Birthday to You. Isn't that lovely? You could also cut this edge with the fancy panel, and that would give you something similar to this, but instead of having the plain edge here, it would have that zigzag edge. So you could do it that way, or if you do like I've done, cut the zigzag, cut the plain with the pattern, and then stack the 2 together. And as you know, with die sets like this, there are many options once you start playing with them, because every time you cut one of these shapes, you're left with an aperture. So you could set the text behind it, raise it up, turn it into a shaker card, all those sorts of lovely tricks and tips that we've shown you across the months. So that's your Happy Birthday set. And then on the same vein, we've got a Best Wishes. So it mustn't have been Best Wishes in the first set. Sorry, I can't remember. My brain's not working. So we've got the Best Wishes. Now this one's got a really lovely scalloped edge. So this one, if you cut it, will give you this. And it's got a little open scallop, like a little lacy edge. It's beautiful. So you can use that with any of the other circle sayings, or you can use it on its own with something else entirely. It's up to you, isn't it? Then you've got your plain edge and your Best Wishes text. So when you cut those 2 together, you'll get this. And of course you can stack those up. Isn't that lovely? So you could mix the edges of these 2, or if you've got any of the other circles, you can mix those as well. So those are your circles, happy birthday and best wishes, and those are both $7.99, which is very reasonable actually for a 3 die set. I think that's wonderful. Then we come on to our harp. Beautiful this. And I know Siobhan on our design team was very excited because Siobhan has Irish roots, and so she absolutely fell in love with this. So this is going to sit alongside the musical collection. It's going to add to our beautiful musical instruments, and don't forget that wonderful DL musical stamp as well to help you create all sorts of gorgeous musical themed cards. But also this, oh thank you, it was with love, yes, yeah, it's lovely. Sorry, where was I? Oh yeah, this, it sort of lends itself in my eyes to Christmas as well, with angels and that type of thing. So and for weddings, people have harpists playing at their weddings, don't they? So yeah, it's a lovely one, that, and the detail on this is unbelievable. It cuts out all these little strings, it embosses all this detail. It's stunning, absolutely stunning. So that's your harp, and that one will retail for $9.99, so go on the hunt for that if you like that one. Then we've got Parisian Romance. Now this one I have got in a proper packet, so it looks a little bit better, doesn't it? This is a set of dies and stamps, and I've found with all of Jamie's matching dies and stamps, they fit so beautifully together. I've played with dies and stamps in the past, and you've probably heard me say it, that just don't fit, and they're a nightmare, and you never get them to look in quite. I used to resort to actually cutting them out by hand because it looked better. So it's fantastic to have these that are very accurately engineered and work beautifully together. So in this set you've got the Eiffel Tower, you've got a beautiful carte postale. I know you've seen lots of beautiful examples from the design team. We've got some lovely sentiments and these beautiful corners. They really are lovely. And then you've got the dies to cut those out. You've got a double heart. This is going to be useful for so many things. Then you've got a banner which will fit lots of these sentiments, and you've got a little beautiful postage stamp, and you've got a postage stamp there, so you can create postcards and little mini books perhaps of a trip you've been on, and you can put the postmark of where you've been and things like that, you know. Oh, sorry, I just got a really funny pain in my head. Oh. Is the Shabby Chic heart the same shape as the nesting hearts? Do you mean do you mean this heart, Kim? Is that the one you mean? I would imagine so, because the design, the thinking that goes behind these sets is really, really important. So let's have a look. Does it fit? Yes, it does. There's a slight bit more of a bow at the top there. Oh, I'm sorry. No, actually there isn't. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Let's take this one off. Okay, let's take this one off. Yes, look. Perfectly contoured to match. Isn't that great? So, thank you for asking that question. That was good to know. I just assumed, but you should never assume, should you? But I know what Jamie's like. His attention to detail is fantastic. Okay, so Shabby Chic dies and stamps, Parisian Romance, $19.99. Then we come on to our vintage fob watch. I absolutely adore this. We've got a stamp. It's a big stamp as well of this beautiful decorative fob watch, and then we have the matching die for it, and again it cuts perfectly, and then you get this little bonus spray of roses and leaves, which is absolutely gorgeous, and they all work so well together, and they work well with the rest of the collection, as you would expect. And I can show you a little example in a minute of something where I've used that. What did I do with it? Oh yes, I'll show you that in a minute. So again, you've got a stamp and a die. These come together as a set, and that's going to set you back $13.99. Alright, And then we have the Rambling Rose. Now this one I haven't got the packaging for, but again it's the same as the Parisian Romance set. You've got the set of stamps with lots of sentiments. You've got beautiful spray of roses, individual rose heads, lots of leafy bits and some sentiments, and then you've got the matching dies, and there are lots of them, and it's really cool because you've got left and right in the dies and in the stamps for the leaves. So you can create some beautiful borders and bouquets and what have you with that. So your Rambling Rose set of dies and stamps, they do come together, £19.99 for those. And finally, but by no means lastly, we've got the rose border. This is absolutely beautiful. It comes with 3 dies and they have different cutting edges to them. So the centre panel does not cut the edges. Alright, these edges won't cut. So this will leave a pattern in the card as a border, but it won't cut apart. And then you've got the option whether you cut it with a guillotine, with a straight edge, or whether you want to add a border to it. So these borders have one edge that cuts and one edge that doesn't. And it can be slightly tricky to see, but just look for the continuous scallop on this one, and that's where it's going to cut. If you look at this edge, it cuts round each little hole, but it's not a continuous steel edge. I can't really show you, I don't think, on here. Maybe, yeah, you can just catch it there. You see how each of those little shapes is separated. So it's just going to cut those out, but it's not going to cut this edge off. Whereas on this edge, we've got a continuous scallop. So once you've worked that out, then you can put them together. And what's also fabulous about this is the edge of this has been scalloped. Can you see? Let me find a bit of plain card to show you. The edge of this has been scalloped, so that if you want to sit this really close, not that you have to, but if you want to, you just tuck those little scallops into each other, and that's going to help you such a lot with your positioning. So you've got a narrow border, which obviously you can cut on both sides. You can also cut these on their own and use them as borders in any way, shape or form. And then you have the other border, which is wider and has more detail. And this one has the full cutting edges on the broderie anglaise style edge. The other edge, again, scalloped but doesn't cut. So same principle. You can tuck those scallops together and just tape them down and cut them, and it will cut this panel with this border. And then you can just pop that onto the other side and cut the other side, should you wish a full panel of that. And I can show you now a sample I did on Saturday, and this was using the thinner border of the two and the rose panel in the middle, but not connecting them. So I cut the narrow borders independently on a piece of plain card, and then I mounted the rose panel, which I cut from some vintage papers, separately. So here we are. So I cut this from some vintage paper, and then I cut the edge straight with a guillotine. So that was a freestanding panel once I'd cut it off. And then on the piece of taupe coloured cardstock behind it, I cut the borders either side with that narrow strip. And here's that lovely fob watch, and there's that little bonus spray that comes with it. Isn't it lovely? Really pretty. So there you go. Lots of ideas already. I must admit my head was spinning with these. Oh, and one thing I wanted to say as well, that when you've got the sets such as the Parisian one, this is my one that I've been using, and the Rambling Rose one, of course you can use the stamps without the dies. You don't have to use the dies with them. and they make this rose makes a beautiful background. And I've got a panel here that I did on one of my samples on Saturday, and I was inspired by Siobhan, I have to say, when I did this. She did a beautiful card with the harp on, and I just loved the colours of it. So I did a similar thing, and I stamped this rose border, changing the angles and changing which bits I stamped to create a background. And then I started to paint it in, and I've been using the Chroma inks, which you know I'm absolutely in love with. Can't get enough of them. But I wanted to show you a little quick other technique with this, other than painting them in. And I did the background fairly pale, and then that allowed me to colour in the roses in a slightly darker shade. So it was tone on tone, but it was really effective. But you know me and my bleach. I love my bleach. There are so many techniques you can do with bleach, and so I thought I'd just show you how reactive these inks are to bleach as well as with water. And I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of the bleach. I don't want a lot. My brush is probably a bit big for this, but let's have a go. And I'm just going to paint as if I was painting, but I'm going to paint with bleach. Look how quickly that reacts. Now, I've done this technique lots of times with lots of inks. I've never seen an ink that reacts this quickly. This is something I've been doing for years. I love it because it means you can do an inky background, then you can take some colour out, and you can put the colour back in a completely different shade, and it looks really impressive because it's hard to work out how you've done it, because if you go over it without taking the colour out, you're going to get a version of what's behind it. But if you take the colour out and then go back in, so for instance I could now make these pink roses or peachy coloured roses or lemon roses or whatever else I want. Whereas if I painted straight on top of the blue with lemon, I'd end up with a green, wouldn't I? You know, it wouldn't be very nice. It wouldn't be the right colour at all. So by doing this, we can take this colour out. You do still have to be careful as if you were painting. You've got to stay within the lines and such. But I've stamped this with VersaFine Clair, which doesn't react to the bleach at all. So it's perfectly fine, you're not going to lose your outline. But I can't get over how white this comes up once you've taken the colour out again. It almost goes right back to the natural colour of the card. And this was watercolour card as well, which tends to be less, it doesn't absorb as quickly. And so it's really lifting the colour off. And then, as I say, you can go back in with your second colour. Oh, you can leave it white like this, white roses. That's quite pretty, isn't it? And I mean, how else could you do without lots of masking? That's how you would have to do it. You'd have to stamp your roses first. Then you'd have to mask them out, which would mean cutting a mask to fit. Then you'd have to paint your background over, and that's not foolproof. It can get underneath your mask. And then you'd be left with the white rose. But it takes an awful lot longer than doing it this way. So there we go. We've got a beautiful white rose now in the middle of that blue background, and people are going to wonder how on earth you've done it. Hi Hazel. No, as long as you let it dry. Don't try and paint it straight away. Let it dry and evaporate and wear off, and then you're fine. You can go back in with another colour and it won't affect it. But if you try to do it too soon, it will just bleach the colour out that you're putting down. So it's just a matter of waiting. And again, like with most things, I just leave things overnight. I do all my bleaching, leave it overnight, so I know it's fine. And then come back and recolour it. And yeah, it would be really lovely, wouldn't it, that? I'm just looking to see if I've got my little palette, because I was doing some painting earlier. And I can show you, if I can find a brush. I'll have to use the same brush. Always rinse your brushes out quickly in water as well, because the bleach, I mean, Not that my brushes aren't anything special, but if you've got like proper bristle brushes, it will rot them if you just leave them in the bleach. So try to not to do that. Let's go with, what did I use? Thermal Reaction, which is a lovely orange colour. I'm just going to put a drop in my palette. Sorry, I reached my arm across. That wasn't very good, was it? This beautiful orange, it's really gorgeous. And orange and blue, or green, those sorts of tones, are opposite each other on the colour wheel. So they are going to work. Now, I don't want this bright orange. Well, why not? I don't. But I keep thinking of Diana. She's got such courage with her colours. And I'm like, no, I just want it wishy-washy. Take off the extra wet. Now this might not work because I've only just bleached it. I think it's probably going to take the colour out as fast as I put it down. No, it's not too bad. It is doing a little bit. Needs to be left a little bit longer. But you get the idea. I think this, and obviously once you've done all of it and you've done your leaves and everything as well, it's going to look amazing. Well, in my opinion. Yeah, it's still bleaching. It's taking the colour out, look. So it's too soon. But you can get an idea of how fabulous that could look, hopefully. But it's taking that colour back out. But it's taking the whiteness off just for now. But that needs a bit longer to dry. So there we go. That was just a quick little technique I wanted to share with you. Before we move on, and I'll do some demos for you. Alright, so I've been using all sorts. I'm going to start with this one. We could be here a while. I hope you're ready for this. Okie doke. Here's this one that I wanted to do. So I've pared it really quite far back. All I've used here is a key, the smallest heart from the layering set, and one of the corners from the Parisian Romance set. And then I've used one of the stencils from the Stencil Vault, and I've used Crafty Concoctions for the rest of it. So that's what I wanted to show you. And I'm going to start with my background. So I have here a piece of card, and I'm going to work with the white shard micro granite paste, this one, and I'm going to mix it with some colour, and then I'm going to put it on my card with my palette knife. So I'm working direct, and somebody did ask me this question when I was supposed to be doing one of my question times, how to use the paste without stencils. Well, here we go. This is one way. So I'm going to add the paste to this, but I want to colorise the paste first. So I'm going to use a little tiny bit of cobalt compound and a little tiny bit of molecular rose. And then I'm going to use quite a lot of white because I want this to look chalky. So those are the three colours I'm going to be using. And you'd need very little of any of this, really, this material. So you can always add more, but as we always say, it's quite difficult to get rid of it once you've done it. So start very gently and add as you go. And while I'm doing this, I also want to do a little heart. So I've got a piece of heart. Now this I've cut from Brown Craft. So this is going to look a little bit different. And I'm going to mix this on my mat. So let's get our white shard microgranite paste out. And I'm going to start with the blue. So actually let me split this into two. One blue, one pink. I might need a bit more, but you can always make more. If you make too much, don't forget you've got those lovely little recipe jars to keep them in. Now that's way too vibrant for me. I wanted a very pastel blue. So I've put far too much ink in. Let's bring back the rest of that paste. I absolutely love Crafty Concoctions because you can just make exactly what you want. It's fantastic. And you can make stuff that is unique. Nobody else will have exactly the same as you. So now that's too white. Too blue rather. I'm going to add in the white and make it very pastel. I just want a really soft blue. So give that a nice mix. Oh, it's lovely. I love messing like this. Oh, it's still a bit too blue. So I could add more paste, or I can keep adding more white. Might do a bit of both. Let's add a bit more white and see how we go. This shows how strong these inks are. That was one little drop, and look at it, it's gone a long way. Right, I think that's not too bad. So let's go for that. Alright, so all I'm going to do is literally spread it as if I was spreading butter on toast, and I'm going to spread it across this piece of card. I'm going to leave some sections not covered because I want to be able to bring in a little bit of pink. You know, it is quite strong, that blue, but it's alright. It doesn't have to be the same every time, does it? Just get as much as you can off your palette knife so that you can reuse it. And I quite like to get some scratchy marks and some texture into this. The idea being that it was like an old bit of wall, you know, with a bit of plaster in it and all that sort of thing. So don't try and make it too perfect. And then do clean up as you go. And that looks terrible on the camera. It looks a lot nicer from where I'm looking. Right, let's get our microgranite out now. And obviously I've just put that on top of the blue where I was working before. Now what I'm going to do this time, because I'm going to show you what I should have done, was put the drop of ink separate. So I could pick up the tiniest little bit and then I would have had my pastel. Look at that. That was the tiniest bit. Honestly, I just touched it with my palette knife. Tiny bit. And mix it into that paste. And that way you won't have too strong a colour like I did with the blue, really. And then to make it more pastel and to make it opaque and chalky, I'm adding in the white, because without the white it would be clear with the little white granules in there. So that's a lovely pastel pink now. I'm just going to touch it a little bit more because this is really strong. And then I'm going to bring this and I'm just going to add touches of it here and there to break up that blue block. You see this? Just like I'm trying to patch up a wall. It's a bit like my house. And then you can go acrosswise as well, drag some that way. The pink's not showing up too much because my blue's really strong, but that's alright. It's going to be different, as I say, every time you do it. Drag it so that you get scratchy marks and what have you. Don't have it pristine. There we go. So that's how to do a faux plaster wall, if that's something you like, and that's also a way of using your paste without a stencil. I have shown you some other ways in previous lives. You don't have to do the whole panel. You can just do a small section of it and do it that way. It's entirely up to you. Now with the heart, I did exactly the same with the heart, but I put it onto the heart with a brush, and I've left my big flat brush. somewhere else. Sorry, just need to blow my nose. Oh. So I just did the same with I did it in pink and dragged the paste down the heart with a big flat brush, and I deliberately left the brush marks in it. So can you see that? It's got lots of texture, and those little beads from the microgranite paste really are visible within that texture on that little heart. Isn't that lovely? Hi Sandra. Oh, sorry. Oh, my nose is running. Okie doke. So now that needs to dry. It takes a fair bit of time. I would leave it, like I say, probably at least an hour, and then you'll be nearer being able to use it. I've just spilled ink everywhere. Okay. So I'll put that to one side, and I'll bring in one I did earlier, and you'll see how much paler I was wanting it to be. So this one is quite a bit greyer than the first one I did. That's because I really used a tiny amount of the blue ink, very little, and I wanted the craft brown cardstock from behind to show. So I dragged it and sort of scraped it till it showed the brown behind, and then I got a brown ink on a blending tool, and I just dragged that also here and there, not too much because you'll lose all the colour, but I just added a little bit of patchiness. This is the vintage look, isn't it? Make it look old, make it look distressed. I know how it feels. But yeah, that was a lot more blue and a lot less pink, and quite grey as well on the back of it, and I did that on craft brown, whereas the first one I did over white, like the one I've just done. So what you put behind this, although the white ink makes it more opaque, it does still show the background colour through as well. It will change the tone of what you use, so that's something to think about. It will, as I say, change the way it looks. Alright, so that's my background, and I've got my little heart, and then I wanted to do a stenciled background, so I've got a piece of card here, and I'm going to use this one from the stencil vault. And I'm going to be inking this with Gathered Twigs Distress, and I'm going to use a brush this time because the brush gives you a much softer effect, and I want a soft effect. So I should have got my magnetic platform ready, but never mind, this is fine. So I'm just lining up the edges, and then I'm going to ink very gently through this until I get a pattern. Now, we've said this before, when you're doing stenciling, don't wait until you can actually physically see the ink with your eye, because you'll have gone too far. There it is, and it's nice and soft, and that's what I want, but here I can hardly see that there's anything there. So try and get your eye in for doing that. If you want it soft, if you want it very strong, then obviously go as heavy as you like, but in this occasion I just wanted it really nicely soft. And I've done this all the way across the card, so I've done a full panel. So all you need to do when you get so far is match up your pattern. I'd obviously do a bit more than I've done, then match up your pattern, carry on and do your whole panel. And it's nice having these geometric stencils because it's really easy to reposition them and get them back in the right spot if you do move them. If you're not confident with doing it like this, hold it down with some tape, or as I say, I do tend to use my magnetic sheet, what's it called, the Make Art Station. I tend to use that a lot for stenciling because it's really quick and you can just move the magnets around. It's very forgiving. So that's what I would tend to do. Alright, and I'm going to, I don't need to actually do it all because most of it's going to be covered up. So I'm just going to come across and I'll do the other side and the bottom bit. So and remember when you're stenciling like this as well to go anti-clockwise and then clockwise, or vice versa, whichever way you work, but always go both ways so that you catch all the surfaces of the stencil. Otherwise you tend to find, and it is a technique that's useful, but you'll get shadow on one side and not the other. So it's a good habit to get into, to go both ways, and that way you catch all of the surface of the stencil, like I say, and then everything matches up and you don't get any sort of shadows. But if you do want shadows, and it's a great way to add shade, then deliberately just go one way and you'll automatically get a shade on one side. Right, there we are. As I say, because I'm doing a kind of a vintage style, I don't want it too perfect. That makes sense. And then you can ink around the edges like you would. I tend to resort to my foam tool for this because it's quicker. Depends how strong you want it, but I tend to find it's much quicker with the foam applicators. And I know we've now got these in the Creative Expressions range, which is fabulous. So if that's something you need, they are available from your stockists, obviously. Let's just give this an edge. You'll notice when I'm inking like this, I always top off my excess ink, because if I don't, I'm going to get a blob if I go straight to my card, and blobs are not good, not unless you're drinking them. Have any of you ever heard of a blob? I used to get it in, yeah, it says wine bar. Pretty lethal they are. Alright, so now we've got a bit of a distressed background, but that's fine for the style that we're going for. So I was sort of heading for a hanging picture sort of thing in my head, and so I wanted it to have a frame. So I've got a couple of frames here that I've cut with some of the Sue Wilson nested rectangles, and I've used two sizes to make my frame. So I've got the plain backing with the biggest size, and then I've cut the biggest size and the next size down to make my frame, and then I've cut another one because I decided I wanted the frame to be stacked. So I'm going to put my panel, which is cut with the smaller size, and it fits in the middle there. I'm going to add these together now and start to build a frame around my panel. So we'll get some glue on this. Just a fine line, you don't need a lot. This is Jamie's clear drain glue, which is really strong when it dries, so you really don't need huge amounts of it. And we'll line these up as nicely as we can. Get the edges all lined up. Okay. And then I'm going to put my panel in the middle, just like that. Get fixed. I'll use my bigger bottle for this, I think. How's everybody doing? We all alright out there? Any questions? Anything you missed? Anything you want to know? Let's tuck this in. So I've put my backing piece to give it some stability, then my first frame, and then my panel. And the reason I didn't put my first panel down first was I wouldn't have got it in the right place, whereas now I can sit it to that frame. But if it's not quite right, it doesn't matter, because I've got a second frame to go over it and neaten everything off. So let's just give that a nice press. Alright, and then I've got foam on the back of my second frame. So let me get these strips off. My lovely friend Irene got me these little strips. I don't know where she got them from, but they're absolutely fabulous. They're so lovely and narrow. And the backing comes off easily, which is always, you know, a bonus. They're great. Right, so now I'm going to put my second frame onto this. And that will just make everything fit. Alright, so there we go. We've got a panel in the middle and we've got a frame around it. Cool. So next I'm going to there's my background ready for that. I'm going to create my key. Now I've got one of those lovely keys from the key and lock set, and I'm going to distress this with some wax. So I've got gold bullion. I've cut the card out of black, and I'm now going to age this with a bit of gold. I love this gold over black card, and when you've got little elements that are embossed, they really pop out when you do this. It's fabulous. You don't have to be too careful. Definitely not going for perfect coverage. I just want it to look a little bit aged and a little bit shabby and a little bit vintage, a bit like me. And then it gives it a lovely finish. It's just gorgeous. And then I'm going to add the tiniest little bits of copper, not too much because it can take over. It's very strong, but just a tiny bit to add a bit of shade and variety to it. Alright, so there we go. That's our fabulous little key. I'll bring that up so you can see it better. Isn't that lovely? And so quick. Really cool. So that's my key. My key's going to go in the middle of my panel, like that. Now you could just leave it like that as a key, but I decided to dress the key, and that's where this little heart comes in. So the heart is going to cover up the top of the key. The little bits at the side here just are a little bit too wide, so I'm going to reduce that. Take that off. Now if I cut that right off, it's going to fall apart, so I'm just going to carefully take off the other bit off that side, otherwise I'll be left with two pieces. And then I can add this to the top of that key. And there's little elements that you can use for lining up. There we go. And then I thought it'd be nice if we had a little bow on this. So I made a tiny, tiny little bow on my bow maker, which I showed you last week how to go about that. And I'm going to attach that at the bottom here. So that's going to take a little while to set, but I've got other things to show you. Oh my goodness, come on. So I'm just pulling the tails down to below. I'll stick that on there. And then I just need to stem something on it while it sets. Bear with me while I find something that will sit on that. Oh, it's not playing ball now. Come on. There we go. Now. Okay. Oh, everything's falling apart. Alright, so next I've done one of the corners with the stamps and dies. So I've already cut it and coloured it, but it's too clean looking for my liking. So I'm going to age this now with some ink, and I'm going to bring in that same foam pad, and I'm just going to use the ink that's already on there. I'm not going to add any more, and I'm going to go right over it. So this will not only shade the white part of the card, but it will also shade the parts that I've coloured and make those look a little bit more vintage. I do need a little bit more ink. So I'm just going right over the whole lot and giving it a bit of a vintage look. See how that really tones it down compared to how it was? It was very clean and fresh looking, which is fine if that's the look you want, but I didn't want that. So let's give it a bit of darkness. There we go. And that's going to sit just in the corner up there. I just use one. I don't always do symmetrical. In fact, I very rarely do symmetrical. But if you if you prefer things symmetrical, then you'll find that the two corners are opposites. So you can have one at the top like this, and the one at the bottom will have its hearts facing the bottom. So again, really beautifully thought out to make life easy for all of us. We just need that to dry. And then I thought it might be fun to make this actually look like a little picture. So once I've got my background sorted, and I'm starting to build my little picture, I've brought in a brad. Do you remember them? When was the last time that you used a brad? I love them. So I've got a brad and I've got a piece of string. So a brad, if you don't know, is a split pin. So it can have a fancy head. This one looks like a little screw head, and then it's got pins on the back that you put through and then split them apart. So it gives you something to fix the layers together with if you want to. You can use it to make things that are movable. But I just wanted this to look like it had been nailed to the wall. I just need to make a little slot for it to go through. So I'm going to go quite near the top. I should have used my craft knife really, but let's do that. Push the pins through. Okay, and then wrap the string around that before you fasten the pins, otherwise you won't be able to get the string behind it. Oops. Oh no. Thought I'd lost it then. So put your string behind and then turn that over. And then when you push your pins down really firmly, it'll hold that string in place. And then you can decide how you want it to sit and where you want it to sit, how wide you want it to be, something like that. And then just stick the string to the back of the frame and get rid of the ends like that. Alright. And then all I need to do then is add it onto a card. So I've got a craft brown base card. Let's stick that on there. Let's go back to our little heart key, which has fallen apart. Oh dear. That needs a bit of attention, but that's going to sit in the middle like that. And there you have it, a vintage heart picture. I can see it on a nice little cottage wall or something like that. I'll give you the original that's actually all stuck together. So that's using some of our beautiful microgranite paste without the stencil, and then I've used the stencil to create the background, but it just gives a really lovely vintage look, doesn't it? And it's almost like stucco plaster, that kind of thing. So it's got real texture to it. You can hear it, and you can certainly feel it. So I just love that. It's a little bit different, isn't it? There we go. So that's that one. What shall we look at next? I've got this one to show you. Lots of bits to this again. Lots of process. I really like something like that. I like to really get my teeth into it. And what I forgot to mention as well with this particular collection, of course, is that the heart, the rose heart, has the broderie anglaise edge to it, as does the border, the rose border. And of course those are what we've got with our nesting dies that came out in the baby collection. So the nesting squares with the broderie anglaise edge, and the nesting circles. And they've also got this lovely little scalloped edge, which again matches the borders that we've got on the rose border set in this set. So I decided to use the square to create my panels with, to match in with the heart die. So I'm going to use another stencil. I've already got my mats and layers started with a craft brown, and that's been cut with just that little scalloped edge from the square set. So this edge on its own, it is a cutting edge, this one, that's the biggest size, and that will cut you a square with this stunning little detailed edge. Absolutely beautiful. So that's my first panel, and then I'm going down to the fancy edge, the broderie anglaise edge, in the next size down, and cutting that in blue. And that's what I've got here. So that's ready to go onto the card panel. And again, if you cut two of these edges together, you will finish up with a frame. So if you cut this edge on the inside, let me show you in a sec what I'm waffling on about. Let's get this in place. Okay. So if I'd cut this, I cut that on its own and it gave me the solid middle, but if I'd cut it with this on the inside of it, then I would have got a frame out of this with a lovely little scalloped inside edge, and I would have got another panel with that lovely little scalloped edge as well. So super versatile, these sets, really lovely. And it's great to have all these options, isn't it? And of course you can team these up with the normal square nesting dies as well. The contours, the dimensions are perfect, so no worries there. And then just a quick stencil onto the next piece. So I've got some watercolour card here, and I've dipped it into some wet ink to give it a bit of colour to start it off. And then I'm going to just quickly add in a bit of this texture. Oops, I don't want that. I want blue, broken china. Let me find my brush. And again, I don't really want this everywhere. So first of all, I'm going to decide which way up I want this to be. Not that it really matters. And then I'm just going to do a bit here and a bit there. I don't want it all over. So I'm just going to go a bit up here. And this is going to be just adding a bit of texture. It's not going to be perfectly obvious that it's there, but it just breaks up that background. Can you see that little bit? It's just a nice little additional touch of pattern here and there. So a little bit up there, and I'll put a little bit down this side, I think, as well. Do try and get your patterns straight when they're geometric like this, rather than having, you know, if you have a bit that's just a bit off, it just ends up looking a bit off, which, you know, looking a bit off is not good. Okay, and then I'm going to do a little bit down here. I just like random patterns, so bit here, bit there. Use whatever lines in the pattern you can to get things lined up and straight, and then just go for it. There we go. So that's our background. And then we can start to build on this now. So I've done various bits. What's going on with this one? So I've started off and I've cut that lovely heart, the rose heart, out of blue card. And again, I've not used the actual inside cutting edge, so I've used the middle fancy panel and the outside cutting edge to give me this heart shape. And then I wanted to put the Eiffel Tower over it, and I thought, oh, those roses would be nice if they stood out a bit more. So I wanted to do a background to just the hearts, just the flowery section. I could have just cut with the single heart panel this shape, and I could have just put that to the back of it. But then when this goes on, you sort of lose the roses somehow, and I thought, well, they'd be nice if they were picked out in white. So the first one I did, when I did this one, I paper pieced all those roses, and it was a labour of love, shall we say. So I thought, how can I do it quicker? And I used that method of cutting two pieces at the same time. So if you take a piece of card and a piece of blue card and cut them at the same time, let me just find my die, that would be helpful. No, I'm dropping things. Oh no. It would be the last one I think to, wouldn't it? Right, so I'm using this and this for the blue panel. So let's get these taped together. Been a bit tight with my card there, haven't I? So get those lined up and taped in place. Right. And then what I need is a small piece of card to go at the back of my roses. So I can use a little scrap, as long as it's big enough to go at the back of my roses. And I'll just pop it under there. It wouldn't stay in place, did it? That's a bit more tape. So I want this to be behind my roses. Now I can guess that that's going to be about right, but I don't want to risk it, so I'm going to put a bigger piece at the back. Let's use this. I'm not going to risk it, I'm going to put a big piece. Okay, so if you've done this before, what you'll know is that it will cut the top panel, but it won't be able to cut through both. So the second panel will come out embossed. At least that's the theory. So I'm going to actually turn it over so I can use it in my machine with my cutting plate on top. And let's push this through and see what we get. It's a little bit harder because we've two layers of card. but it works fantastically well. Okay. So now we'll take this out. And we've got, obviously you need to poke all the bits out. But we've got our front panel cut. And I have to say that by doing 2 layers together, it does give a really clean cut. All the bits just pop out really easily because there's that little bit of extra pressure. Pop all those bits out, and then underneath what we're left with is, well, actually pretty much a full heart, but I didn't want the full heart. All I want is the roses in the middle. So we'll take off all these extra bits. And then I'm just literally going to cut this out. So the bit I want, it's now got a lovely embossed pattern on it of the roses. Can you see that? But it can't cut through. So cut that out with some sharp scissors. And then you'll be able to pop it at the back of that. And so here's one I did earlier, because it does take a little while to cut them out. And that is going to fit back. You just get it the right way around. It's that way. Yeah. Look, what have I done? Sorry, I can't find the right way around. There we are. There we are. And it's going to fit perfectly, of course, because it's cut with the same pattern. So all you need to do then is glue that in place, and you've now got paper piecing that isn't really, it's like faux paper piecing, if you like, and it works brilliantly for such a complicated pattern that I didn't want to have to cut by hand, and so that's made my life a whole lot quicker and easier by doing that. Cut 2 pieces together, the piece you want cut properly next to the die, and then another piece behind it, and you'll get this double cut effect. But it's not really a double cut effect, is it? So let's glue these together. So what I'm going to do is put the glue on the back of the blue bit and find the biggest, more solid sections of the roses. It doesn't have to be absolutely every millimetre, because it's just going to click into place anyway with having that embossing on it. But you can see there are some parts of the roses that are slightly wider. So I just put a few dots of glue on there. And then again, put that in the right place. Snap it in, because it's got the pattern embossed, so it's really easy to get it in the right place once you've got it turned around the right way. And there we are. Faux paper piecing. Just let that dry. And then I'm going to add on to this that lovely craft brown heart that now won't look too heavy at the back of this. Alright. So again, just a small amount of glue around the edge of this heart here. And that's going to hold our brown craft heart in place. And there we are. That's our main sort of panel for the front. So now we can go back to our construction, and we've got our big card, and then we've got our panel that we've done our stenciling on, and that's going to sit on top nicely there as well. I've left it slightly bigger, so it sort of, it does cover some of the pattern, but I quite like just a small amount of the lacy edge showing. Oh, and I've also inked around the edge of this to distress it somewhat. Yeah, I forgot that. So again, using a brown ink. Vintage doesn't always mean it has to be brown, and I'll show you that in my next demo if you're still with me and you're wanting to see more. This is going to bring all the brown, the blue and the cream together, and then we've got that little extra hint of pink, which is going to team up with the roses when I do those. So it is all pulling together, and that's really important when you're building a project, that you do choose your colours carefully and don't use too many. I would, you know, sort of stick with probably 3 colours max. Obviously it depends what you're doing, but as a general guide, 3 colours is usually enough. And they can be toning colours or contrasting colours, and here I've gone for, obviously the blue and the brown was the main feature, and then I've chosen to bring in some pink. Let's go with that. And I'm just lining up my corners with the dots in the centre of those little daisies, just to help me get that right. There we are, lovely. And then I can add on the heart. Now I've also chosen to distress the edge of the heart, just to add that vintage touch. So again, brown ink even onto the blue card is going to work. Just a quick swipe. There we are. And then we can add that on as well. Well, thank you, Creative Expressions. And when I glue this down, I'm going to just glue the brown heart down so that the blue edge isn't completely glued down flat. So it helps it look just a little bit more lacy. Well, at least in my head it did. You know, this, it doesn't all have to be completely glued. Sometimes it's nice to let the edges lift a little bit of things. Depends on what you're doing, of course. I better check my cards the right way around. That's a good idea, isn't it? And then I've stamped and die cut the Eiffel Tower, and I've got foam, oh dear, lots of bits of foam on the back. I'll be as quick as I can with this. It's amazing how well these dies and stamps work, honestly. I think I was traumatised by some that I'd had to work with in the past that just didn't line up, and they used to drive me absolutely nuts, and it put me right off using matching dies and stamps. But these are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to pop my Eiffel Tower to one side so I don't cover up all those lovely roses. And then all I need to finish off with now are some flowers, and I've used again the stamps and dies from this particular set, and I've got them ready, and I've coloured them with the Chroma Lab inks. And I decided, I did my first ones very, very pink, and then I thought, well, I'd like them a little bit more sort of peachy coloured, so that's what I did. So on this one, this was the Molecular Rose on its own, and this was the, oh, do you know, I can't remember the names, Compound Leaf. And then with this one, I brought in a tiny bit of thermal reaction, just to give it a slightly muted peachy tone. So that's something else with these inks you can do, is mix your own colours and tone it exactly to your project for whatever you want. So I've got the main rose head here, and then I've got the smaller rose head, and I just sort of arranged these. I've got the bud to go up at the top, and then I've got a mixture. It's nice because you've got a mixture of rose leaves and then these other little foliagey bits. So it's lovely to have that because it doesn't make it look too solid. So I've put some rose leaves coming out the bottom here and a rose leaf in the middle, but then I've used these nice little other bits just to fill in that spray of flowers like that. Stick them on and you're done. And then I've just stamped the word Paris, which was on the set, the Parisian Romance set of stamps. So there's your finished one of a beautiful vintage Parisian whatever scene of some sort. Okay, moving on. Have we time for another one? No questions? No? Jolly good. Okie dokie. So this next one, I decided I was going to do vintage but differently. I think we often think that vintage is brown. Things have to be brown, and they really don't. So I decided I would go off at a bit of a different tangent and do something with grey. I love grey. So I decided that we would have a look at that. And I'm going to, throwing stuff off the floor. I'm going to be using this die set as well, which is stunning. This is the Loop Circles from Sue Wilson. CED 5549. I know it's in stock at the warehouse, but if you want to get this one, you'll have to badger your stockists. I'm sure they'll have it because it's not that old. 2023 it came out originally, and there's an oval as well, I think. So it's a beautiful set. I absolutely love it. It only cuts the outside edge. You don't have any cutting edges here, but you can team this up with the circle nesting dies if you wanted to cut frames and other mats and layers and things to go with it. So that's really lovely. So I'm using that. I'm also going to be using that stunning fob watch and its matching die. So let's bring those in. And then I'm going to use the roses and some bits and bobs as well. But I want to show you first of all how, if you have got a set of dies and stamps and you're perhaps not getting on with them, or you can't make them fit, how to do it. So I'm going to show you that. But first of all, I'm going to stamp myself a background using the wood grain stamp, which is beautiful. So somewhere, what have I done with it? Oh, I've lost everything. I'm sorry. I've lost a piece of white card. There it is. I'm not going mad. Not quite. So this is slightly bigger than I need, and I'm going to stamp it with the wood grain stamp. So I'm going to get it lined up in my machine, my gadget, and then I'm going to ink the stamp with Hickory Smoke Distress, which is a pale grey. I really like this effect for getting kind of a stone washed, distressed kind of look. So all I'm going to do with this is swipe it. I'm rubbing it up and down this stamp. It doesn't look like anything's going on there, but it is. And then I'm going to stamp that onto the piece of card. Press firmly. And because we're going sort of distressed and vintage, it doesn't even matter if it's not absolutely perfect. So there we go. And then what I'm going to do is turn my piece of card round. I don't want to move my stamp. I can't, it's one of them. So what I'm going to do instead is turn my card round and just gauge where the pattern lines up. because there's going to be something in the middle of this, so it doesn't matter if it's not, you know, absolutely perfect. And then I'm swiping again with the ink, just rub it up and down the stamp. We're talking, you know, distressed woodwork here, so it don't matter. That's not to say you shouldn't try to get the best you can, but yeah. I've just got a piece of paper in there that's just protecting this from getting covered in ink. Not because I don't want it, I'm bothered about it getting messy, but sometimes if you don't know the ink's there, next time you come to it and then you find yourself in a bit of a mess. Okay, so I need to get rid of that. Oh. That's one side. Okay, so I've got my background, and that's going to be then cut down to a smaller square. So now I want to show you how I match up dies and stamps if they don't match up very well in the first place. So the first thing I do is stamp the stamp out on a bit of copy paper. And this doesn't have to be a perfect image, it's not something you're going to use except for this process. So I've used the stamp and stamped it on some copy paper. Then I'm going to bring in the die. So this is the outline die for the watch, and I've cut that into a piece of white card. Okay, so I've got my die cut aperture and I've got my die cut. I'm now going to place the aperture around the stamped image. Doing it this way, I can see exactly where that sits and where the borders need to be and all of that. Now, as I say, with Jamie's dies and stamps, you don't really generally need to do this process because they fit so well. But if you've got some dies and stamps that you can't get right without, you know, getting them uneven around the edges, this is a great way of doing it. So you stamp the stamp on copy paper and you put the aperture over the stamp image. Then you put your die cut back into there. Now what I should have done was have this in place from when I'd stamped on the paper, but I've had to move it since then. So what I'm going to do instead is pop the stamp, and this is another way of doing it, pop the stamp into that die cut aperture. It's not as accurate because you don't know exactly how the stamp's been cut, but it's not bad. But as I say, what I should have done was stamp the stamp and then it's in the right place, then put the aperture over, then put that in, and now I can ink this, and I'm going to use archival coffee. This is a really nice vintage brown colour, and as I said I was going to do grey, well I am going to do grey, but I want my clock to stand out because it is the focal point. So lots of tapping, and now this should sit absolutely perfectly on that die cut. No stress, no panic, no fiddling about trying to make it fit. Look at that, perfect. Happy with that. And that's how I match up my dies and stamps. So that might be something you could practice perhaps. Alright, next I've stamped out and die cut some of the flowers. Now I do want to show you a little bit of how I've coloured these. I know you've seen me do this probably umpteen times, those of you that follow me, but it's always good to revisit, isn't it? So all I've used is thermal reaction, which is this nice orangey colour, and compound leaf, which is this vibrant green, and I want to get these really watered down. I want it very, very soft. So I have got some others somewhere. Oh, well, I did have. Sorry about this. Everything's going wrong tonight. Oh, I've lost them. Never mind. I'll show you on here how I got these so lovely and pale. Because these inks are super concentrated. So what I've done, I've squeezed a little drop out, and then with a wet brush I pick a little bit up and put it into a separate palette. Then I add some more water to that till it's really nice and watered down. And then I take the excess off my brush, because if I don't it'll go outside the lines, and you can see now how that's much paler, and that's how I've got a nice pale tone on the roses. And I love that colour. You do get roses that colour, don't you? And then in the green, as I say, it's the compound leaf. Pick a little bit up, put it into a separate well, add some more water till it's really watered down a lot. And these have been sat here, you know, you can reconstitute these inks if they've been left. Take off the excess and then paint. So you get a really lovely pale tone. And then, once you've done that, you can then quite easily add shade. So you can go back into your stronger colour and add a little bit of water. And then if you want some shade, that's how you get it. So you go a little bit stronger, and you can then start to add shade. So for doing leaves and things like that, if you want a bit more of a stronger colour around the veins or down one side of a leaf, you can just go back in, use a slightly stronger part of the ink, and that's how easy it can be to start to get shade. So lovely to do that extra step and get that little bit of shading happening. So I haven't done that on here yet, but I'm going to. So I'm going to bring back my brush, and I'm going to go into a slightly stronger colour, and just here and there on the leaves I can start to build in that little bit of shade. It doesn't have to be much, but it doesn't have to make a difference. And you certainly don't have to do it everywhere either. Just a little bit here and there. Maybe just up one side of the leaf. So like these little leaves, maybe just around the bottom where it's near the rose. Things like that. And it just adds that extra little touch of diamond. Can you see the difference between these that I've just added shade to and these that I haven't? Makes a big difference. And it doesn't take that long, but it is the step worth doing, in my opinion. It's only ever my opinion. Alright, so next I decided I was going to go down the doily route. I think vintage cards lend themselves, don't they, to doilies. So here I've got my background, my grey wood grain background, and I've cut it with a square from the nesting dies. The reason I like to use the nesting dies for squares, even though I can cut on a guillotine, is because I know the sizing is going to be absolutely perfect. So I've cut the plain square, and then I've used the decal to cut a slightly bigger mat in just in the white. I've also inked around the edge of this with the same hickory smoke, just very gently, just so it's got a bit of an edge to it. And this is the panel that I'm going to be building on. So then I've got my white base card, and I've got some of this beautiful foundations card, which is called Barely Grey, if I remember rightly. And that's going to create my mats and layers for this card. Again, cut with the square die. The other reason I love to use the nesting dies is it gives a gorgeous beveled edge and a very, very slightly rounded corner. Not that you'd notice, but it doesn't look quite as raw as when you cut things with a guillotine, if that makes sense. So we'll get our square on there. And this is a 7x7 card, so nice size. Let me straight that, Gwen. Okay. That's the beauty of Jamie's glue, you can wiggle it, can't you? So I've got my foam on here. I've also stamped one of the sentiments from the Roses set. There are some really lovely sentiments with all of these sets. And this one says, "Have a beautiful day." Put that down. And then I've cut, with the loopy circles, I've cut one from Jamie's woven textured paper. And I've inked the loopy edge, again with the hickory smoke. And that's going to go in the centre. And then I've cut the small circle from the Broderie Anglaise edged baby, the set that came out with the baby set, the nesting circles, in the cream crushed velvet paper, which is ivory. I normally think I wouldn't put these colours together, but it kind of works. So we've got all of that. Just need to attach these, and these are just going to go on flat. The nice thing about using these papers again is they don't add a huge amount of weight to a card or bulk. So, and I've just put some, again, leaving the edges so they're a little bit floaty. Just put a little bit down the middle. I really like that combo. The loopy edge and the daisy edge. Okay. And then we've got our beautiful fog watch. And that's going to go in the middle. Now I could lift that, but I don't think I'm going to. I don't know. Decisions. No, I'm going to leave it flat. So I'll glue that down. And then I've got my lovely flowers already. I've got foam on these as well. I've given them a tiny bit of shaping. Just a bit of a curl on them, that's all. I'll pop that one across the corner there. And then this one is going to go up here. Just to create an opposite corner. And give this a little bit of curl. Put that under there. Coming down. And then I've got the bud. And I have that just coming out the side as well, just balances the opposite corner a little bit. And there we have it, vintage done differently. Bit of grey instead of the brown, nice peach roses, and that fantastic fog watch. And I love that with grey background. It's nice, isn't it? Bit different. Have a beautiful day. So that's what I've got for you tonight. Our gorgeous Shabby Vintage collection, which is kicking up a storm, selling quickly. So if you are interested, as I say, at the moment it's out of stock in the warehouse. So if you want to get onto your stockists before they run out, because it may be a while before they can get it back again. Alright, let me come back to you. Hello. So all I've got to say is thank you for your company. It's been lovely for me to have a bit of playtime. I have a few dates for you if you've got pen and pencil ready. Jamie and Pete are off to Frankfurt at some unearthly hour tomorrow morning. They have a massive trade show over there, and they're going looking for new goodies. So I'm sure they'll be bringing back something really special. I hope they have a lovely time and a safe journey. So there won't be a live on Monday with Jamie, unfortunately, but I think we can excuse him this time. sorry, on the 7th of February, which is this Saturday, our wonderful Francoise is going to be on Hobby Maker with her brand new collection of Normans and Normas, and we all know how loved they are, so I can't wait to see those. Her show times are 2 p.m. and 6 p.m, and I hope you'll tune in to give Francoise your warm support. Francoise gets very nervous doing TV, so she's always pleased to know that people are there. I'm going to be back on Hobby Maker on the 14th, and I will have a brand new collection from Sue Wilson to show you next week on my live. I'll be doing a sneaky peek of that one, so tune in if you can at 7 next Thursday if you want a sneaky peek of that, and then that will be going on Hobby Maker on Saturday the 14th. My show times are 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. Oh, Maureen. Oh dear. Don't know if I want to know. March the 1st, Jamie will be on TV with a brand new collection of his own. Can't wait for that. And then his next live will be the 16th. So, quite a way off. So, I hope you have a lovely weekend, all of you. Thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Have a wonderful week till then. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.